Welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast, made for women who want their healthiest years to be ahead of them, not behind them. Join your host, Courtney Townley, right now as she breaks down the fairy tale health story you have been chasing all of your life into sensible action steps and lasting change. Hello, and welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast. This is your host, Courtney Townley. As always, thank you so much for taking time to be here with me today. And I hope that your 2021 is off to a fantastic start. For those of you who participated in the free Healthiest Year Yet 5-day challenge last week, I want to say thank you. I was completely blown away by the amount of participation we had, and the feedback has been really remarkable. Now, if you're someone who missed this event or you're someone who's new to the show who could use a bit of help getting your mind primed to make 2021 your healthiest year yet, I want you to know you can still register for the event. All the course lessons and materials are in a course vault, and you just need to register so we can get it to you. So you can do that by going to graceandgrit.com/healthiest year yet. Now, I'm going to be totally straight with you. The holidays were really tough in my household this year, and 2021 did not start off the way that I expected it to. And I want to share a bit of that with you today because I want to talk about the power of learning how to coach yourself when life throws you curveballs. And I think that what I share with you today is going to really illustrate that for you. So the focus of today's podcast is going to be about the power of self-coaching and why I think it is the most powerful thing that I could teach a woman who wants to improve her health or really any area of her life. So first, let's get clear on what the heck self-coaching is. Self-coaching is the art of showing up in your life in a way that allows you to like who you are and what you do and why you do it. Self-coaching is knowing your values and standards for your life and managing your thoughts and feelings and behaviors to live by those standards and values. It is the skill of referencing your own inner wisdom to navigate obstacles and challenges that will most surely arise along your journey. It's the willingness to study yourself so you can know yourself well and ultimately lead yourself well to the most vibrant and fulfilled version of you. In my opinion, self-coaching is the linchpin to self-leadership, and this is what I teach to my clients and my students. It is a practice of radical self-awareness. It's how you access creativity and wisdom within yourself, so you can fortify your self-trust, and above all, you can sustain the changes that you make in your life. Because let's face it, sustainability is a very real problem for most people on the path to changing anything about their life. And learning how to coach yourself is really the only way to create sustainable change. There is no more powerful skill that I could teach you. And really, I think the main reason that's true is because self-coaching is really teaching you how to reference yourself as the expert on your life, which can be terrifying because it means that you assume full responsibility for your successes and your failures. There's no one and nothing to blame. And it's pretty much the opposite of what we are taught to do in the health arena. We are taught by popular culture that someone else always knows better than we do when it comes to our health. That we should follow a set of standards that worked for somebody else's life. And I will be very honest here. Most of my life, I have been a very avid rule follower. For a long time, I loved being told what to do. And why? Well, the reason anybody likes being told what to do, because it makes life easier in a lot of ways. You don't have to think for yourself. You have someone or something to blame if things don't work out. You don't really have to take the time to go in and get to know yourself. But here's the thing. The comfort that comes from not having to think for yourself pales in comparison to what you will feel by learning how to be the leader of your own life. And look, I get it. The notion of being self-led is no small thing for a lot of women, because again, it's the opposite of what we've been conditioned to do. We've been conditioned to people please. We've been conditioned to live by the standards and expectations that other people have for our life. And so it's like a fish swimming upstream. When you start becoming the leader of your own life, it feels like you're swimming against the current. But the only way to develop deep health is through powerful self-leadership. And I really believe that self-coaching is really the gateway to developing self-leadership. So to illustrate this, let's get back to my horrible holiday story. Some of you who are students and clients of mine already kind of know the nuts and bolts of this. But for those of you who haven't really heard from me in a few weeks, I will kind of lay the story for you. Over the holidays, we were planning to go to my folks' house. They live about 2 hours north of us. And my brother, who hasn't spent Christmas with us in like 20 years, was coming over from Jackson Hole. And my parents were going to help me with my son after the holidays so I could get some projects done. I think like many of you probably listening, if you have young children at home, my son has been in the hybrid school model for the past, 6 months. So really, my kid hasn't been in school since March of last year. He goes to school 2 days a week, Thursday and Friday. And of course, there's the online learning, but we all know how that goes, right? It's a few hours a day, and trying to run a business while my son has been home has been really challenging. So my parents were going to help me out with that over the holidays. And what ended up happening is around the 16th of December, my Great Dane, who is not even 2 years old yet, woke up one morning pretty sick. Like he was drooling and I could tell he didn't want to open his eyes. And it turns out he had what they call acute uveitis. So he had inflammation in his eyes. And we don't know why. Believe me, we have spent so much money doing all the testing, trying to get to the root of this problem. But the reality is we don't know. The vets keep calling it idiopathic, which means there's something going on in his system, but nobody knows what it is. So we went to vet appointment after vet appointment. We consulted with, I think, 4 different veterinarians. We drove him over to Spokane, Washington to see a canine ophthalmologist. And we even came home and removed the Christmas tree from our house, thinking that maybe he was allergic to it. Then around the 22nd of December, my husband came down with COVID. And so, of course, he had to be quarantined in the house. We had to cancel all of our holiday plans with my parents. We did not see my brother. And my dog continued to get sicker. So ultimately, it was determined that the kindest thing to do would be to remove my dog's eyes. And believe me, this is after incredible amounts of testing and medication and alternative therapies. We tried everything to help our dog with this eye inflammation. And I'm not telling you all of this to feel sorry for me or, be a victim, for me to be a victim of this, the past 3 weeks. But I'm just trying to kind of lay the land of how I had to coach myself through this period of time. So first, I want to acknowledge that there was a lot of ugly crying on my part, and there were some very ungraceful moments because I am human. And even though I have a lot of tools at my disposal, I don't always use them to the best of my ability. However, having the tools that I have in my arsenal to coach myself through these types of things, I know 150% helped to soften the experience significantly. So I want to talk a little bit about what the specifics were of my self-coaching process over the past 3 weeks. So first and foremost, self-awareness was a really big key. I was highly aware of the level of stress that I was carrying, both physically and mentally, because of course I too got COVID. Right? So about a week after my husband, I came down with COVID. Fortunately, I had very mild symptoms. I had some indigestion. I had, sort of a mild cold, and I lost my taste and smell for a week. So high levels of mental and physical stress. And I recognized that self-care needed to look very different from what it normally looks like. So I needed to unload my plate of unnecessary stress, meaning I called, some people who helped me in my business and asked them to take some things over. I granted myself the grace of getting more rest and sleep. And I reached out to several friends and even a coach of mine to talk out what I was rumbling with, because I was struggling. And I know for me, one of the ways that I help to get through a struggle is by talking it out and having somebody as a sounding board. So if I did not have a practice of self-awareness, none of that really would have been possible for me. I wouldn't have acknowledged my stress levels. I would not have acknowledged that self-care needed to look different. I would not have asked for what I needed. And all of that, of course, would have built up to me probably exploding at some point. So the second thing that I think really helped me to manage my stress and soften the intensity of this time was the capacity to process emotion in healthy ways. So, of course, there were a lot of emotions on deck over the past 3 weeks for me. Emotions that are not the feel-good, happy, joyful emotions. So I had a lot of fear about my dog losing his eyes. I had a lot of fear about having COVID and my husband having COVID. I had a lot of frustration. I had a lot of grief and disappointment. And having learned about myself and what my tendencies are when these types of emotions show up, I knew what my armor would be. And armor is a phrase that Brené Brown uses to talk about the ways in which we protect ourselves against being vulnerable. So when difficult emotions arise, how do you protect yourself against them? Not that you should, but we all do it to some degree. And I will tell you that my armor against difficult emotions is number one, anger. Because if I'm angry, I don't have to feel anything else. Also, it's really easy for me to have a drink, right? To have some wine, to have some whiskey. I'm not a big drinker, but I definitely like a drink on occasion. And I definitely notice my tendency to drink more alcohol when I'm stressed. Also, I eat more sugar, especially around the holidays, right? There was more sugar coming in our home. And I knew that if it stayed there, I would gravitate towards it because I would be trying to make myself feel better emotionally by eating sugar. And temporarily, I would feel better. But I also knew there would be a very steep price to pay on the other side. Another piece of my armor is complaining. I could, really go down this rabbit hole of complaining about all the injustices of this and how frustrating this was and how unfair this was and all the things. So those are typically some of the ways that I protect myself against feeling things like fear, frustration, grief, and disappointment. So step one in processing emotion in healthy ways for me, and this is what I teach my clients, is just to name and notice what's going on. Name the emotion. And that in and of itself can be a really difficult thing for a lot of women to do because they're so disconnected from their emotional landscape. So naming and notice what we're feeling can be really powerful in and of itself. And then acknowledging why those emotions are showing up. And the reason any emotion shows up is because of what's going on in our head, the way we're thinking about what's happening in our life. And then step 3, of course, is you have a choice to make. Do you like your reasons for feeling this emotion? And do you just need to let the emotion pass through you? Meaning you need to feel the feels. Or are you creating unnecessary suffering because of the way you're thinking about your situation? And you need to do some thought management work. And I will tell you, over the past 3 weeks, I have had a tremendous amount of opportunity to do thought management work. Because what I found out by doing some thought downloads, which basically just means pen to page and writing about what was going on in my life, I had a lot of very unhelpful thoughts. I had a lot of thoughts that were creating a lot of unnecessary suffering for me as I was going through all this stuff over the holidays. Thought one of the thoughts was, this shouldn't be happening. So I was basically fighting with reality. And I've said this before on the podcast, but when we battle reality, we're never going to win. Reality will always win. So this shouldn't be happening was not in any way a useful thought to me because it made me feel powerless. And when I feel powerless, guess how I show up in my life? I don't show up in a way that I'm proud of, that's for certain. And I honestly contribute to more things going wrong. So that is not at all a useful thought for me, and I had to take responsibility for that thinking. Another thought that I had that wasn't useful is, I can't do this. I can't manage the holidays and an 11-year-old child and a dog that's going blind and a husband who has COVID. I can't do this. And when I tell myself I can't do this, guess what I look for evidence for? I look for evidence for all the reasons why that's true. And you're always going to find evidence for what you think. But when I look for evidence for why I can't do something, is that helpful for me creating any kind of outcome that I want? Of course not. So again, super unhelpful. And another thought that I'll share with you that I know kept surfacing in this time was, this is so unfair. Right? I kept having this, I had this expectation for what the holidays were supposed to look like and how it was supposed to roll. And that thought kept emerging that this is so unfair. Well, where is it written that life is fair? Right? And the only reason that thought emerged is because I was comparing my reality to other people's reality. Nothing about that was useful to me. Nothing about that helped me to show up in a more powerful way. So these are all thoughts that I had to really take a good look at and ask myself if I wanted to keep them or pivot my thinking. And of course, because of the tools that I have, I was able to pivot my thinking. Again, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't not messy. But I do think that I fared way better than I would have had I not had the skills to coach myself through it. Another thing that I think is a big part of self-coaching that I did a lot of over the past 3 weeks was asking for what I needed. I am not somebody who historically has been awesome at asking for what I need because I sort of want to have this appearance that I can do all things for all people all the time. Outrageous, I know. Like unrealistic, I know. But there is that tendency in me. And I lived in that space for many, many years. So it's a really easy mentality to revert to in times of stress. But I saw what was happening, right? Sort of feeling like I was trying to manage it all myself. I knew that it wasn't going to work. So I called some friends to help me out with all the things, right? Getting dogs to the vet appointments and picking up groceries and all the things that I needed help with. I even remember saying to my vet multiple times, I need you to talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old, because I was having a really hard time understanding what was happening with my dog. And to me, that's just such a graceful thing to do, right? To ask for what we need when life has been disrupted by a curveball or 40. So extending grace is a big part of coaching yourself. And what that means specifically is identifying what you need to let go of and where you might need to dig a little bit deeper in order to move yourself beyond this obstacle. And for me, that looked like letting go of like the dishes or the house looking perfect or the laundry being done. I had to delegate some work tasks because I had just too much on my plate. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to manage it all in a way that would create an outcome that I wanted. So I had to extend myself the grace of letting some things go, asking for help, and clarifying a lot of conversations that I was having with people because I wasn't processing things as well as I normally do when I'm not so stressed. And the final element that I want to share with you today is just, and this is such a huge piece of coaching yourself, is no matter what the obstacle is, no matter what the challenge is, forge for the gold. What did I learn here in this situation? Because I would not want to go through any of this again. I would never wish this on anybody, but it was my reality. And what I learned was, first of all, I have so much empathy for people who struggle during the holidays. Because I've never struggled during the holidays. I've always been able to be with my family, and we've always been relatively healthy. And there's never been these kinds of issues around the holidays. And so for people who've lost loved ones or who've had really tragic things happen, this whole experience opened my heart in a way that never would have been possible without it. And I'm so grateful for that. I also was reminded that all emotion deserves a seat at the table. There's nothing wrong with me feeling sad that my dog had to lose his eyes. There was nothing wrong with me being disappointed that I couldn't be with my family for the holidays. Those are very natural and healthy responses to life events. But what would have made them unhealthy is if I turned to the alcohol, if I was eating all the sugary foods in order to not feel those emotions. But like I said earlier, I let myself feel the feels. There were more tears over the holidays than there's probably been in my life in a very long time. And I didn't judge myself for that. I just saw it as a very necessary part of processing the emotions that were in the arena with me. I was also reminded that I am resilient and I can do hard things. And that there is nothing that a good night's sleep can't help soften. Because all of my problems over the past 3 weeks felt the worst, felt insurmountable at the end of the day or in the middle of the night. But I did make a very fierce effort to get as much good sleep as I could. For me, that looks like taking a hot bath, specifically in Epsom salt, because it helps to relax me. I did take melatonin a few nights, which I don't normally, but I was having a tough time getting to sleep a few nights and allowing myself to sleep in a little bit longer in the morning. And when I was able to do those things for myself, all of my problems seemed so much more manageable in the morning. So I share this story with you in the hopes that you will see the value of learning how to coach yourself. But also because I think the story so beautifully illustrates that health is so much bigger than diet and exercise. Nurturing my mental health these past few weeks is what was required of me to protect my physical health. Because if I wasn't managing my thoughts and my emotions and extending myself the grace, I would have been eating my emotions. I would have been making it myself suffer so unnecessarily. And I see this happening all the time with women that I'm around and women that I work with. I think that, and I know this is a generalization, but in general, I do believe that most women would benefit from having more tools in their toolbox to manage their mental and emotional health. And that's really the focus of my work these days. So even though, yes, of course, I'm still very much a health coach and I have, the fitness and the nutrition and all that background to help with the nitty-gritty of sort of logistics of the health journey, I truly believe that none of it matters if you don't learn how to coach yourself. Because think about it. If you only do well by following strict rules and regulations followed by somebody else, so that somebody else has laid out for you, how is that sustainable? What is going to happen when you no longer have access to that person? Or your life changes and that system or protocol just no longer makes sense to the wholeness of your life. So what I think happens if you don't learn how to coach yourself and lead yourself is that you stagnate at some point, or you will suffer unnecessarily at some point, or you will reach for things that make you temporarily feel better, but have a lot of long-term consequences, like the alcohol, like the food, like the Netflixing, right? Like the self-loathing. And for a lot of women, I think all of those things happen. They stagnate, they suffer unnecessarily, they buffer with things that have a lot of long-term consequences, specifically to their health. And most tragically, they miss out on truly living their life. And that is kind of the default of not learning how to lead yourself, not knowing how to coach yourself. So I always say this, I've said this many times on the podcast, and I always remind, my students and women I interact with of this, that whoever you learn from, whatever you sign up for, I really hope it is in dedication to helping you to become more self-directed in your own life. And if you're a woman who could use some education and support in nurturing your mental and emotional health so you can elevate your physical health, you should totally consider joining me inside of Rumble and Rise. And I'll tell you what Rumble and Rise is. A lot of you know, some of you don't. Rumble and Rise is an incredible incubator of support and education to help women break free from diet culture and learn how to step into a leadership role to improve their health and their life so they can stop looking for the answers outside of themselves. And I will tell you this, if you love the Grace and Grit podcast, Rumble and Rise will rock your world. Health is a practice of righting decisions and habits that may no longer be serving you or maybe never did. I often say it's a rumble between who you've been in the past and who you want to be moving forward. And I wish it was as easy as finding the perfect diet or exercise program, but it's not. There's so much more to it. So I will tell you quickly what makes Rumble and Rise so amazing and so unique is that it's not a 21-day, 4-week, or 6-week program. This is a community that you stay a part of for as long as you feel you need it. We have weekly group coaching calls where I can help coach you through obstacles and challenges that you're facing, but also help you to celebrate your wins. I do a monthly masterclass, and I give you ways of applying what you're learning, so you're not just consuming content. Rumble and Rise is really an arena of practice. And most of the masterclasses that I teach are on one of 3 topics. I teach, of course, around chemical management, how to manage your chemical health. And then I talk a lot about mental and emotional health. And that may be in relationships. It may be your relationship with food, your relationship with your body image. That looks like a lot of different things. But the mental and emotional management is what allows you to show up to be doing the things you want to be doing for yourself in 2021 in dedication to your health. So this site is packed with incredible resources to help you be more consistent with the things you want to be doing for yourself. And everything is available through a private podcast channel. So once you sign up, not only do you get access to a private online course vault where everything is housed, but you will receive instructions for how to download the private podcast on your phone so you can actually listen to the lessons and content on the go. You don't have to sit in front of your computer screen and watch the videos if you don't want. So it's really a one-stop shop for all your rumbling needs along your health journey. And this is what I'm most excited about. This offer is only $59 a month or $590 a year. That is a screaming deal because you're getting access to the best of my work. I don't just give you access to the monthly content like each month. I give you access to everything I've created. So there is a lot available to you. And I really hope a lot of you will consider joining me because I've been doing this podcast for years. I have offered a lot of obviously courses and programs along the way, but this is the best of what I can offer you. And it is the cheapest price point I have ever offered. And the reason for that is very specific. It's because I want to reach as many women as possible. I want to help as many women as possible. So if it's something you think you might be interested in, you can go to graceandgrit.com/ready to rumble. Once again, graceandgrit.com/ready to rumble. And if you lose that address, you can always go to my website and just go to programs and you will find all the information you need to register for Rumble and Rise. So I hope I will see you on the inside. I hope that you will dedicate yourself to learning how to better lead yourself in 2021, whatever that looks like for you. Maybe it's with me, maybe it's elsewhere. But I hope this was helpful. I hope it was helpful to hear a little bit about my own rumble in my own life and how I use the skills that I've acquired over the years to maneuver my way through in the most graceful way that I knew how. I am cheering you on, and I hope that you will be back again next week. All right, my friends, take care. Thank you for listening to the Grace and Grit podcast. It is time to mend the fabric of the female health story, and it starts with you taking radical responsibility for your own self-care. You are worth the effort, and with a little grace and grit, anything is possible.